I met Adrian right here 6 years ago. We were both here at this convocation speaking on the exact same topic, and we didn't know each other at all. And I remember listening to her thinking, who is she? Why don't I know her? And how can I get her to work for Priceless? Rest is history. Yeah, so we've become really good friends. I feel like we share one mind and heart when it comes to this topic. I love Adrian's passion for just her heart for teens right now and the way that she invests wholeheartedly. I think as we engage and move into fighting crimes like trafficking, it's going to take getting upstream and investing in our young people in ways that we've haven't before. So I just love your heart for that, Adrian. Well, we're going to go through some slides here, both take part in this, but a little bit about Priceless. I just want to give you a little history. You heard in my bio a little bit of how it started, but I had this huge group of women thinking, okay, we're gathering, we're doing fabulous Bible studies and tea parties and all the things, and I was standing upstairs in the copy room getting ready for one of these big women's events, and I was running off 19 pages of program notes, one for the person to do the video, the lights, the band, the worship team, all the things. And I remember sitting there thinking, this just doesn't really feel like or look like the church that I read about in the New Testament. And then this thought occurred to me. If we, the church, closed our doors in our community, would the community grieve the loss of us? Would they even know we are gone? I want to be a part of a church that the community says we can't do it without them. That they would grieve the loss of us if we closed our doors. And I already knew the answer to that question, so now I'm upstairs getting ready to speak, and I'm crying, going, I think I might be wasting my time. It was a hard conversation, prayer, with my Jesus, saying, what am I doing? If you need to shift something, you have permission to shift. If you need me to go down a different path, I'll go down a different path. And so thought, okay, we gathered all my leaders. We began to pray. We kind of put a lot of the ministry things on hold and said, we're just going to pray in this season, see how God would have us invest in our community. And this topic of trafficking kept coming up over and over again. I didn't know anything about it. Wasn't sure it was really happening in Alaska, but thought we have to pay attention. And so we began to pray into that, and we decided that, all right, we're going to do what we know how to do, that we're going to fight trafficking the way we know how to fight, and that's through prayer. So we decided to not have the next big women's event. We decided to take those 900 women and get them in a room and pray. And so we set up the auditorium, the foyer, several classrooms with prayer stations all around, praying for law enforcement over here, praying for victims over here, praying for victims' families over here. And so we're ready. We're ready. And 7 people walked through the door that night. I was discouraged. I was like, man, they don't want to pray. Man, where are these people? I'm never putting on another tea party for them again. And we decided that, okay, we're all tired. We all have limited time. I'm going to make this prayer thing super easy. I'm going to send as many people as will be willing to give me their cell phone number, a reminder text on Wednesday to stop what you're doing, pray from 12 to 12:15. We called it the Revolt, an abolitionist prayer movement, and we just started passing out that number. They were passing their numbers to us, but we got about 900, then a couple thousand. Pretty soon it was a pretty significant text group, and we started hearing about BP opening up their boardroom on Wednesdays to let anyone who was getting that text go pray there. We heard of daycares that were stopping what they're doing and letting their workers pray. We heard about prayer groups popping up on Wednesdays from 12 to 12:15 to focus entirely on trafficking in the state of Alaska. 9 months into that prayer, I got a call from the trooper And when you're a mother of 4 teenagers and you get a call from the trooper, your heart beats fast. And he wanted to meet me for coffee. So I went and met him for coffee, and he says, is your little group, your Priceless thing you're starting, are you ready to start doing direct client work? I knew we had no training. I didn't know much at all. So I said, yes, of course we are. And then I immediately said, no, we're not. And then I said, okay, here's what I got to tell you. You're a trooper. You work for the state. I work for a church. We're not even supposed to be working together. But you said you're desperate, and I can offer about 50 untrained, crazy church ladies. If you're okay with that, we'll say yes. And he said, I have no choice. Give me the crazy church ladies. And so from that day on, we've had this nickname with our troopers called the Crazy Church Ladies, and we stepped into direct client work at that time. And let me tell you, this trooper was needy of our services because he had been conducting surveillance of a trafficking ring here in the state of Alaska that he thought was probably the biggest trafficking ring at the time in the entire country. And he'd been doing this search for 9 months, the same amount of time that we'd been praying. And so he said, I don't know, I can't tell you what's happened, but we're ready to pull this bust, and we need help with what we think will be about 75 victims. And he goes, I don't know, I can't tell you what's happened, but it's almost like the sun, moon, and the stars lined up for us to break into this. I go, it wasn't the sun, moon, and the stars. There's a bunch of us praying for you. And that's how Priceless really started, that's how we started engaging in this fight. So untrained, I love that I was the first in the state to go down this path because all the mistakes have been made. Now the next people coming along in the fight, they don't have to do the dumb things I did. They get to engage without some of those horrific mistakes I made. Put myself in danger more times than I can count. But God protected us, and we launched Priceless from there. So let's just go through these slides. I think you'll throw them up there. All right, keep going a little bit. I already told you our story. We'll move on. So sex trafficking is the second fastest growing crime on Alaskan soil, only second to opioid abuse. The vast majority of traffickers' victims are brought into the sex trade 13 to 15. This is a stat that came from 2 years ago. We're watching this number move younger and younger. 1 in 6 people who are being trafficked now are under the age of 12. The average time a victim spends being sold as a sex slave is 7 years, 10 acts per day. The average trafficker or pimp controls 5 victims. The average victim brings in about $200,000 per year to the pimp. So you can see we're playing a game in high finance. Every time we rescue a girl, every time a girl comes into our program, somebody out there is pretty mad at us because we've cost them a lot of money. All right, let's go to the next slide. When an Alaskan Native teen or young Alaskan travels to Fairbanks or Anchorage or any one of our bigger villages, they are approached by a trafficker within 72 hours. And this stat comes from our FBI. More than 44% of homeless teens have been trafficked. 1 in 6 runaways will become a victim of child sex trafficking or have to pay with their bodies for shelter. Over 60% of sex trafficking victims spend time in the 80% have spent time in our Alaskan foster care system. Next slide. Native American women are at a particular risk. 40% of sex trafficking victims are Native American. This does not account for the countless numbers of Native Alaskan or Native Americans who end up on the missing or murdered list. or they're just designated as runaway. So the stats are really hard to gather because we just don't know. And this crime gets reported most often as domestic violence. So even our law enforcement aren't even asking the right questions. A young woman comes in, of course she's going to lie because she's scared to death. She's afraid for her life, so they never really get the truth. So we've got to have a better way of identifying. So rural Alaska, it's less formal. We'll kind of glide through some of these slides. We see that a lot of times family members are being sold by family members, or there's trades being made. And so we call it, the term here is called tundra pimping. And so we're watching this crime boil up in our villages, but when we went around in villages doing town halls, and you started talking about this, they all could identify that, yes, this is happening, but no, it's not trafficking. They had no idea what was happening was even wrong in some senses. The stats are that high. I've been to a shelter in one of our villages and asked the woman who's running the shelter, and I think it was about a 30-bed shelter, said, how many of these beds do you believe are held by people who've been sold? And she looked at me, she goes, I don't understand the question. I said, how many of these beds do you believe are women who've been forced to have sex and someone's making money off their body? And she said, all of them. What a silly question. That's what happens here. Yeah. How has the crime of sex trafficking changed in Alaska over the last 5 years? We have internet trafficking, child trafficking, gang trafficking, and we now have underage perpetrators. Since the induction of the iPhone several years ago, childhood sexual crimes from children on children increased 500% in that 1 year and have been steadily going up ever since. We now have cases of trafficking in all 6 high schools in the Anchorage area. So I'm going to let Adrian talk a little bit about, okay, how is this happening?
So one of the most common ways that a lot of our young girls are being trafficked is through fantasy relationships, is what we call them. Basic boy and girl relationship. The girl thinks that they're dating, it seems wonderful. He's selling her a dream. He's telling her how much he loves her. He's buying her lavish gifts. He's telling her, hey, whatever you want, we'll do it. I'll buy you this, I'll buy you that, like the newest cell phone, the best designer bags. Just making her life look like it's a fairy tale. So that's why we call them fantasy relationships. And we actually call that specific trafficker a Romeo pimp, because we think about Romeo and Juliet and how wonderful he was to Juliet and how he got away from his family and all that. And so basically that's exactly what he's doing to her. He's trying to gain her trust. He's trying to pull her away from family and friends. He's trying to show her hey, she's desperate for love. And this is the only place she feels like she can get it because of things he's saying. And he's manipulating, he's controlling, he's saying everything that seems to sell her on this, including round-trip tickets to Mexico, and we're gonna get married and have a family, and we're gonna do all the wonderful things. Little does she know, he is grooming her into being trafficked and selling her, because eventually it's gonna turn into, okay, we're running low on money. I need you to start going out and doing some work now. So we'll move more into that. Next slide. There's a quote here of a young lady. Yep, right there. It says, I got upset when I realized what he was doing, but I kept doing it because he made me feel like I was special. And we hear that a lot. And one of the main questions we hear a lot is, why don't they just leave? There's a lot of reasons why they won't leave. One of the biggest reasons is fear. They are afraid for their life. And not only just for their life, they're afraid for their family's life. They've been threatened. They say, if you leave here, if you tell anybody what's happening, I will kill your family. Statements like that are being made, and so they're having to stay around. Also, something we call a trauma bond. They're now so attached to them, they feel like my whole family has deserted me. They don't care about me. They're not looking for me. He's the only one that seems to care for me. So now they are attached to them. Now they're say a psychological term we use, Stockholm syndrome, where they are staying, they're attached, is even if you open the door to let them go, there's something that's still keeping them there that won't let them escape because of, I said, fear, embarrassment. There's so many other reasons, like I said, fear, embarrassment, feelings of worthiness, unworthiness. They don't feel like they're worthy enough. And another big one as well, shame. They feel a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, and what they feel like they've done something bad. So why? Why would I go back out there? I've already done all of this, even though it was not in their control. Traffickers are preying. You can go to the next slide. Traffickers are always preying on the vulnerabilities. So you ask, what are those vulnerabilities that they're preying on? They're specifically spotting. And it's crazy. I always say this. I feel like there's like something on their forehead that shows that this is who I'm going after. So they're specifically looking for young girls who have a prior sexual abuse history. They've been in foster care. They're runaways, homeless. To add to that, come from broken homes, a fatherless home. There's addiction, there's mental illness. There's so many different reasons. These are what we call vulnerabilities that these traffickers will prey on because there are already a lot of insecurities that they're dealing with that they're not able to, they haven't faced those insecurities. And so someone who is uplifting them, saying uplifting them or encouraging them or loving them is the trafficker. So again, so the next slide, they again play the shame game. They've done something bad was done to them. So now they feel like, okay, something bad was done to me. Now I'm bad. I'm bad. That's what they're thinking in their head. But we know that's not true. And we know that these are all lies from the enemy that's keeping them there, that's holding them to this attachment, these chains that are binding them down. And so we're definitely trying to work on getting our victims to be survivors, to know that they are victorious, to come out of this and knowing that they are victors and not feeling shame and feeling guilt in all of this.
So we'll go ahead to a couple slides down here. One of the things that has really played into this crime, which has kept us from being able to catch the perpetrators more easily, is the involvement of the internet. We are in a different day and age. There's no way around it. You think you can protect your kids from this? No, you cannot protect them from this. All the things that are going to be exposed to them during from the internet, you can give them the skills they need to know what to do when they see something they shouldn't see, when they encounter someone they shouldn't encounter. They need skills to be able to recognize what's going on. I can take 10 minutes with a junior high kid and help them understand what a perpetrator looks like online. And yet it's very difficult to even get this training in schools. Social media sites have allowed traffickers a faster, simpler, more effective mechanism to recruit victims, and a trafficker knows this. If they never lay a finger on the woman that they're trafficking, it's unlikely that they'll ever go to jail. And so I remember being shocked when our first victim came into our program that was entirely trafficked without ever laying eyes on or meeting her trafficker. It was all through threats and coercion through the internet. So I want to talk a little bit about the internet. We'll go to this next slide with all of the emojis. There's a coded language, and I'm just teasing some things out there so that hopefully you as parents, grandparents will say, I kind of need a little bit more awareness in this area. But quite often you see profiles and you see these different little symbols up in the profiles. They all mean something. So here's a little bit of the language of trafficking and traffickers. A rose is considered a price. So if there's one rose, that means it's very inexpensive. 2 roses, 3 roses, and so forth. A crown or a diamond means that this person has a pimp already, or a lock. A lock that's open means that she has a pimp, or a lock with a key means they has a pimp but looking for a new one. An open lock available for a new pimp. A growing heart means that they're underage. If there's a plane or something like that, it means that they're moving somebody. Someone's moving from one place to another. A crown, someone owns her. A cherry or flower means a virgin and a minor. And Peach means a bottom girl, which basically is a girl that's recruiting other girls for her pimp. So a lot of things that we just see that might be innocent, but there's the language even in our social media. And I think sometimes we think, oh wow, there's bad apps and there's okay apps. So we think something like Facebook. Facebook's the number 1 tool used by traffickers, and I use it too. I feel like it's my magazine, only people I know, but there's inherent dangers that we need to be aware of. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. I'm going to talk just a minute about TikTok. This is the one I'm going to say. Everyone else I'm going to say, know your kids' handles on those sites. Be familiar with their passwords. You should open an account yourself and be obnoxious enough to invite all of their friends to be your friend too. Just get all up in their business on there. Be active in it. TikTok is the one I'm going to say absolutely no way. It was designed by traffickers. It's primarily used for trafficking, especially in its inception. And it is the one site that in the agreement, when you open your account, you must agree to the fact that every click you make on your phone, every location, every room you're in will be documented. And they have access to it. You cannot take a picture or a video and post it on TikTok without easily being able to be hacked right down to the very room in your house. So that is the one app I'm going to say there isn't anyone, not adult or children, that should have this app.
I will say this, I'll add this as well. On TikTok, as well as Instagram, and maybe Facebook as well, when you're posting stories, they say after 24 hours they disappear. They do not disappear. So when you think that I'm posting this up and then now all of a sudden it's gone, maybe on your phone you can't see it, but I guarantee you it's still out there. And FBI, law enforcement, they're able to go back and pull all those pictures, all those videos that have been taken, as well as traffickers are learning how to be able to get all of those pictures and all those videos that you are thinking is now gone from social media.
I like the term one of our coworkers uses, everything you do on the internet is written in pen, not pencil. You need to be aware of that. And so that is, I think, a primary way as parents. There are sites that have inherent dangers like that we just have to be very, very aware of. We know that in the gaming chat rooms, we have in our program, several of our survivors have been recruited through gaming chat rooms. And I think sometimes we think, when we teach our kids about don't talk to strangers. Is it a stranger if you've been chatting on a game that you guys play together for 3 months? What if 16-year-old boy this is an actual story I'm going to tell you. 16-year-old, and he's playing all the nerdy games. And all of a sudden in that chat room, a 16-year-old girl starts striking up a conversation with him. And she's cute. And she likes this guy. And he knows no one really likes him, And she likes to play the games he plays. And so he's thinking this is an ideal situation. So they exchange lots of conversation within the game. Pretty soon it moves over to text messaging. Pretty soon they really start having a crush on each other. And then the 16-year-old girl, who's not a 16-year-old girl, but a 40-year-old man, sends this boy a nude photo. He likes it. She sends him another one. Then she might send a video. And she's like, wait a minute, I'm the only one sending this stuff. You can at least send me 1 or 2 pictures. Okay, now send me a video. And boom, then he reveals who he is, tells the boy, if you don't send me $500 by tomorrow, I'm going to send this video to your parents. If you don't, then the next week, okay, actually, I'm going to need $1,000 now, or this is going to go to your school. I'm going to post it on social media. And so that's a crime. It's part of trafficking. We call it sextortion. And after trying to keep up with the demands and the financial stuff that he had to do, he finally went to his parents, and law enforcement was able to bust this guy. He had over 350 similar accounts. Yeah. All right. What works? So Priceless has decided to try a new approach. And guess where we learned this approach? right out of the New Testament, a little word we call discipleship. We decided to build an organization that was relational. Like, what does somebody who's been recruited in through fantasy relationships need most of all? They need to know they're valued. They need to know they have worth. Who's better at doing that than the church? Tell me. Nobody. And I think so many times we start these organizations to fight a crime like trafficking, but we forget that the one thing they need is new, healthy community, people in their lives that actually love them and care about them. What if the church was giving all the words of affirmation that these young girls want to hear and they're hearing from these guys in these fantasy relationships? What if dads were saying those things? What if grandmas were saying those things? Would they be as vulnerable? I don't think so. And so we built an organization off of mentoring. And one of the most, pivotal moments for me was we gathered a group of kids who aged out of the foster care system. What that means is now the state considers you an adult. If you didn't find a forever home, you don't have a family, we're going to exit you from foster care because you outgrew it, and now you're on your own. Good luck with adulthood. State services end. Very, very vulnerable population. Over half of them, or right under half of them, end up on the streets, and we already talked about what happens to our kids on the streets. And so we decided to gather this group of kids who had aged out of the foster care system and wanted to talk to them about mentoring. Now, most of them don't have a forever family because they're violent, or they went into the foster care system when they were teenagers. They're hard to adopt out, or maybe they've got some kind of behavior issues, whatnot. And so the last thing they really want are these people coming along that are pretending to be another set of parents. So we wanted to get them in a room and say, hey, we want to provide a mentorship program, but what do you want? What do you want in mentors? Hopefully we could glean some things from this. And this one girl, she's 21 years old, aged out of foster care system. She's cute as can be. And she'd been in over 20 foster care homes. And she finally, when she turned 20, a year prior to this, finally the family that she was with gave her a birthday gift of a letter that said they wanted to adopt her and have her be there in their forever family. And she responded by taking the family minivan out that night and just thrashing it. Went on a joyride, destroyed their car, and came back home, and they exited her from their house and sent her back somewhere. I asked her the question, so why'd you destroy the van? And she said, because they said they would love me unconditionally, and I knew they were lying. So what do you want in a mentoring program? And this is what she said. I want one person in my life who's not paid to be there. Can you imagine if everyone in your life was a judge, teacher, probation officer, foster care parent, doctor, therapist after therapist after therapist after every other state agency has their hands in your life? And this little girl wants one person who's not paid to be there. One person who's not getting a paycheck or profiting off of their relationship. I thought, that's it. We're going to start providing some friends. We're going to start walking with kids. We're going to start loving them right where they are. In fact, our organization is a little different that way. The first thing you get when you enter our program is not shelter, food, clothes, one of those things. They're necessary. All the services are. First thing you get is a team of 2 mentors and 1 case manager. This is the first taste of healthy community this person may have seen in a long time or ever. And that little team of 4 begins to navigate life. And do you know the first thing we do isn't sit down and hear the horrible story? Tell us the story and let's figure out how we can fix you. The first thing we do is ask what their favorite color is, and what their hobbies are, what they like to eat, all the light stuff, right? Our other case manager always asks this question. I've been in a number of intakes with her, and she, usually we were in an intervention with a 13-year-old girl. Law enforcement was there. It's all just really heavy and intense, and she wants to get out of the situation she's in. So it was a lot of tension in this one meeting, and then Allison, our coworker, says, I have one more question to ask you. This is during all the intake paperwork. She says, if you had a peg leg, a hollow wooden peg leg, what would you keep inside that leg? Just changed the whole room. All of a sudden, trust began to come up. We laughed about it at first, but then she thought long and hard about it, and she says, well, I'm going to need 2 peg legs because I feel like I got a split personality. So on some days, okay, you can have 2. That's totally fine. So this undeniable power of mentoring. And so we started down this path. We're 12 years in of providing people. We call ourselves relationship brokers. Where do we get these people that love on kids, love on young women, love on people who've been in the worst place in life? Well, I had one other agency tell me, you sure spend a lot of time at churches and with church people, and it just seems like you're just trying to push religion on these kids. And I said, well, why do you keep going to churches? Why do you keep going to churches? A couple reasons. Number one, I'm just not an idiot. If I go to a church, you're all sitting in a chair, facing me. You're probably a little more caring than if I go, where else am I going to go? Am I going to go stand in the mall and start asking for mentors? No. I know who I'm after. I know where love comes from, right? And the other reason is I don't believe we need more laws in place to fight this crime. It'll help. It'll make a little dent. We're not going to fight this with just money. We can't give enough money. There's not enough money on the planet to fight trafficking. Trust me. We can't compete with those numbers. If we had way more law enforcement, maybe helpful, but it's not going to make a dent. You know what will change this? The church. You're not only a nice addition in the fight, but let me just tell you this, church. You are mission critical, the only hope. The only hope is as we come together through faith in Jesus Christ as churches and say, no more. Not on Alaskan soil. We're not doing it.
So, what's next? What's next for Priceless? How do we go about being there for these women and for these kids? As we said, we're going into the churches and we're getting those who want to help and want to be a part of their lives, who want to make sure that they're not paid to be there. They're people who are willing to take time away from their jobs, taking time away from their families to be of a support and love to someone who is marginalized.
Give us some examples of what those relationships might look like.
Okay.
Everybody always says, I won't know what to say.
So, as Gwen said, the first thing that you're not going to do is to ask them their story of being trafficked. You don't want to re-victimize them. You don't want to ask them, like, what happened to you? How long were you out there? How long, who's your trafficker? Are they in jail? You don't want to ask them that because you don't know what triggers are going to pop up. Triggers are very real. So you don't know what triggers are going to pop up. I also share, too, that it's not the same as like a big brothers, big sisters relationship. You can't just take them to a park because sometimes in that park they were trafficked right there. They had a drug exchange happen in that park. So you have to be very careful. That's why it's very important to ask them, what are your hobbies? What's something you enjoy doing? We had, I think Gwen shares this one, we had two mentors who got with one of our survivors, and she said she enjoyed smoothies. And so they decided to go around to all these different coffee carts mostly and wanted to try all the smoothies. And they rated which smoothies are the best. It's as simple as that. It's not a complicated type of thing. It's literally what is something that they enjoy. Bring them back to the normal that we know, not the normal that they have experienced. We want to take them away from that So we want them to just do something that they enjoy. We had another set of mentors, this was nothing but God of how it was worked out, but a survivor enjoyed exercise, and she loved to run marathons and 5Ks and all of that, and she stopped. She all of a sudden just wanted to stop because running seemed like she's running away from her trafficker. She's constantly having to escape, so she stopped that. So through the midst of the relationship that she's building with her mentors, the mentors that got matched with her also are marathon runners and run 5Ks and half marathons. Not Gwen, not me either. But they love that. So as the relationship kept building and they kept talking, like, hey, we're going to slowly get back into what you love to do. And eventually they did, and I think it was not last year, maybe it was right before the pandemic, they went and ran her first marathon since she had been trafficked and completed it, which is beautiful. We want them to be able to get back to those things that they love and enjoy so they don't have to live in fear for the rest of their life. So being able to just support them in those areas, again, some of them even have never sat in a restaurant before. They don't know how to order off a menu because their trafficker has controlled everything that they do, what they eat, what they wear, who they go, where they go, who they hang out with. They've never been able to do those simple things in life. Take them to a restaurant. Show them how to order, how to talk to a waitress, how to tip, how to pay. Take them to the store and teach them how to budget. They might want to get the Dove body wash, but then there's an off-brand one that's like $3 cheaper. Teach them those things. There's a lot of things that they're not aware of because they've had no control over their life. So that's the role of a mentor, is just being that support, being that friend, just being a friend to them. Yes. So one thing, she's asked me what my role is. So my role, I'm not a mentor, but I am a case manager. So what I do is I come alongside, we interview all of our mentors that come in, our potential mentors that come in, and we interview them to see if they are ready and in a place to be able to support the broken. We want to make sure that they're in a whole place to be able to support our broken. So my role with our survivors is providing and moving the boulders in their life. So if they do need housing, if they do need food, if they do need clothing, if they do need public assistance or anything like that, that's my job. So I'm supporting them in those ways. We are a networking organization, as we say this all the time. We are a mentoring organization, not a social services organization. There are enough social service organizations in our community where we can network and partner along with them to be able to provide those services. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We already know that there's programs out there. Why not work together as a community to be able to provide those things? So we will make sure they have those services, those things that they're looking for. So I will call up everyone I possibly can and say, hey, we need a bed available. She doesn't have a place to live. We need some clothes. We need some gift cards. We need transportation. Can you help us with some Uber gift cards or Uber codes or bus passes? Whatever it is they're needing, that's my role. The mentors are not doing that part. They're the ones who are going to help them pack up their belongings, get them a suitcase to get them moved into their new place, help them decorate it. The mentors get to do the fun stuff. My job is fun. I love what I do. I know I love the work that I do. But the mentors get to support them and be right there as they're getting their new place together and get to hang up pictures and all of that fun stuff. So.
Yeah, I always say, like, it was a couple times I was with my mentee, she starts telling her story. Sometimes they feel like if they give us their story, we might give them something, right? And so starts telling me that story, but we don't want them just to trust anybody with that story. We don't want them to trust just anybody. So reach over and say, hey, your story is such a precious thing, and I know I'm not the one to walk you into healing through that. But I'm going to take you to a trauma counselor. We're going to get that all set up for you. And I'm going to be the one to pick you up after your session and take you to ice cream. That's my role as a mentor. So each one of us in the program have mentored as well. And Adrienne says her job is fun. I would hate Adrienne's job because she is problem solving and walking in crisis all day. But she does that so that our mentors don't have to. And she loves it. She's crazy. So we love that about her. I'm just going to tell you one other really cool thing that's coming down the pipeline for us is we're opening a coffee shop called Refuge Coffee Collab. And it's a drop-in center so that our clients, no matter what's going on in their life, have a place to go during our open hours to stop in and get a hygiene kit or a cup of coffee or sit down at a table. There'll always be a case manager on site to work through some of those urgent needs. Meanwhile, our clients get fired a lot, don't they? You get new jobs for them and, I'm sorry, we probably should have said don't hit your coworkers, but here we are. And so we want to create a place that we can do some on-site, loving job training, and so they can learn how to show up on time and learn what it looks like to respond in a respectful way to an employer and coworkers and hopefully be able to keep a job. So we're excited about that, and plus we want to serve the best coffee in town so that maybe there's some money coming in and these gals can make a living and we can offset some of the cost of our ministry as well. So that's coming hopefully this fall sometime. And one of the next steps for all of you would be to go through something called Engage Training. And that's just a training where you can come, hear all that we talk about. And sometimes I think people think, I'm going to go to Engage Training and we're going to hold up a microscope and our magnifying glass and look deep and dark into the crime of sex trafficking. No, that's not what we do. We hold up a mirror and look at ourselves and say, what do I need? Who do I need to be so that I have a life worth giving away? What do I need? I started telling you earlier, that we got an award. We won the National FBI Director's Choice Award back in Washington, D.C., our little Priceless from up here. And yeah. It was fun. I got to go back and get that award. You want to fly me to Washington, D.C., put me up in a nice hotel, and hand me a big glass trophy for what the church calls discipleship? Well, you go ahead, because that's just my one job. Like, that's what we're all supposed to be doing, right? And so, yeah, you want to single us out and thank us for doing our one job? Okay, we'll take it. But anyway, that's the power of we call it mentoring in our organization. That's how we get away with it. But, man, it's just discipleship. That's what we're all called to do. That's our one job, right? I'm going to say it as strongly as this. You disciple people. You pour your life into people, and the church will happen. You don't have to build a church. It builds itself through discipleship. But if you build a church, discipleship may or may not happen. So we like to go about it from that angle.
Any questions? Yes, go ahead. She said, so to kind of reiterate what you said that on social media, now that people can go on, can they also see private accounts? There are ways they can go about seeing private accounts. So even though we do like to, we'll cover up our page and you have to ask to be friends first and then you can see everything, that's not always the case.
There are rules around privacy things with Facebook and Instagram. There are not those same rules with TikTok. TikTok is the one exception. There is no such thing as privacy on TikTok.
My question was, does Priceless have an extension arm in Fairbanks? We have Fairbanks churches there here also.
No, but I'll send Adrian next week if we need to.
I will share this, though. Our engaged training that we do, we have traveled all across the state to do the engaged training, as well as outside of the state. So there's been engaged trainings down in the lower 48, down in North Carolina, Florida, a few different places. So we can go up to Fairbanks to do the engaged training for the weekend and to build up mentors because there's trafficking there too.
Yeah, we'll partner with any organization, and that's one of the things I love. We're a networking organization. We're not going to build something in Fairbanks. If something is there, we're going to come alongside and support.
I have a question. So when the young kids are on the internet and they say, are you 18 or older, is that kind of like a pull in for deceitfulness when they have when they say, are you 18 or older, and kids, you know, you have to pay games and stuff like that. Is that a type of way for the sex trafficking?
Okay, if a game or something like that asks you if you're 18 or older, and you have to check that box yes in order to have access to it or pay or whatnot, that's just a way for that game to not get sued. They've asked the question. So I don't know that there's any relevancy beyond that, but there's no such thing as a way to identify all that kind of information. It's just a free-for-all. We do have a really excellent training through Priceless. If you're interested, put on for parents and teachers and adults about internet safety training. And let me just say, we're living in an age of the fastest changing technological explosion of all time. So, and my daughter called me, she says, Mom, would you feel bad if I went and we're going to meet with this younger couple and ask them a few parenting things. I always come to you for parenting, but I just feel like I want some input from this other couple. I'm like, I have no idea what it's like to raise kids in this day and age. You go get all the help you need. Man, when I was talking on the phone to a young man, I was stuck in the kitchen with a curly cord, right? I have no idea what it means to have this level of invasion. So yeah, we older people, hey, we got a job to do. We got to learn this stuff. I know our thumbs don't work as fast. You got to learn to text. I'm sorry, you just do.
Any other questions? We have one training coming up. I know it's in the Nikiski, Soldotna area. That one's coming up. When's the next Anchorage one? Do we have one scheduled yet? October is the next one in Anchorage. But then they're pretty much quarterly after that.
We like to cap the class between 30 and 50 people because there's tons of interaction. And so I love to do church-specific ones. If you want to hold a training, we'll come. We'll do it for your group. Yeah.
I have a question concerning the process. Like, I've noticed in the airports that there are signs that say, if you see something, say something, and things like that. But oftentimes when people report stuff and try to get involved, sometimes they're criminalized. And I don't know if they're able to be anonymous, or what's the process after reporting that you have seen something or you say something about a situation that you thought might be the case?
Okay. My answer to that is, so walking through that very issue with our FBI, like, okay, 9 times out of 10 people call the police, they're like, seriously, what are you doing? That doesn't raise to a level of even calling 911. So, but what they're looking at is a grid. So let's say I call on my neighbor because something looks a little fishy over there. I'm seeing young girls going in and out of the house at all hours of the night. So I call. That's not a crime for young girls to go in and out of a house all night. So I haven't reported a crime, but I have checked a box on a grid that those notes were taken. Let's say the neighbor on the other side calls again and say, hey, I heard yelling and screaming over there. Now we've got 2 boxes on the grid checked. When they start filling in a grid, all of a sudden they will shift in that supposed crime into a higher category. And so I always say, I think one of the power of the community is just our nosiness. Like, the more we're the nosy neighbors. Like, honestly, that's the best way to shut some of these places down. I know a hotel in town here, it was well known. I mean, I was calling the police regularly saying, hey, I've got a client of mine who went back into prostitution, and she's saying there's a young girl locked in the hotel room across the way from her. So I was sending cops to this hotel all the time. Like, I finally asked, you guys, why can't you shut this down? We all know the whole hotel, like, okay, why are there cleaning services every 2 hours all through the night? Like, this is not okay. They're like, we don't have enough evidence to shut it down. But you keep calling, and now we're getting a good grid going, and we'll start looking for other ways to shut it down so that we can start looking at the crime. So they ended up, I won't give too much information, but they ended up just starting to have as many people as we knew send in complaints, noise complaints, whatnot, about what's happening at this place. And so they were going over there and fining this hotel $100,000 per incident, right? And they shut them down financially, but they couldn't go after the actual crime, but they did shut the whole place down. So it might not be ideal, but we have a lot of power when we just speak up. It might not come after one time, might not come after two, but we have a lot of power if we just keep our eyeballs out there and we just keep saying stuff.
You can contact us. We do have a website, pricelessalaska.org is our website, as well as if you have any suspicions or you know of someone who has possibly been trafficked, we do have a hotline number. I'll share it now, but if you need it again, come see me. I'll be at church all night. 907-229-2629. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Sorry. I have it in my phone. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But I have the hotline number, so that's the number that you would call locally. You'll call our line. I'm the one who holds on to it, so I'll be the one that answers it every time. If I don't answer, I will call back. So just contact that number. I'm actually going to pull it up right now so you have it, so I can tell you correctly. 907-250-2926. That's the number. 907-250-2926. That's how you can contact us. Or again, on our website, pricelessalaska.org, there is a form that you can fill out if you don't want to call as well. Thank you so much for this time.